Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I am, of course, Nick, joined here by KP, and we are going through our next episode of WWE Recap, which includes Raw, NXT, and Smackdown. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started with Raw, which took place in Dayton, Ohio, at the Nutter Center, which Pat McAfee will take full advantage of this later on a couple times. Let's begin with the first event of the night, which was a recap of the long-awaited Rhea versus Liv rivalry coming to a head finally, or at least getting close to, with Rhea returning last week in what I felt was a bit of a rushed ending. So I'm happy they started out with this. Basically, uh, Rhea starts out and clearly very upset with Dom as she should be. She says we've all waited this long. She can wait at least until SummerSlam, and she wants that what's rightfully hers, women's title back. Liv Morgan then comes on the jumbotron and of course accepts. And Dom basically can be seen apologizing throughout the whole night, trying to win her affections back. And yeah, that goes about how well as you think it would. Then after this, we see him set up a room with basically a bunch of romantic bits, and it's a pretty funny segment with Damien as well. He's known, as most of us do, that he was going to be in trouble, and basically just laughed at the whole situation. Pretty comical, and yeah, well, eventually gets the bit where Rhea basically says, because Dom kind of put his foot in his mouth, said something along the lines of, um, you know, I don't belong to anyone, and then he says, "You belong to me," and so it seems like maybe they're on the same page by the end of the night. But these segments were kind of sprinkled in through the night, so this was a pretty good segment, and I'm glad they got a little more time because last week's did felt a bit rushed. But on to the first match of the night, we have Sheamus and Big Bronson Reed. To my surprise, Sheamus ended up picking up the win, and post match, Pete Dunne comes back in. Basically, Big Bronson Reed was going to attack Sheamus once again. Pete kind of intervened, which we thought maybe that was going to be, he's going to be on Sheamus's side. They had a bit of an awkward competition last week, but then he kind of avoided him again, and Bronson ends up attacking Sheamus with the tsunami, and yeah, Pete clearly not over the broken up faction they had a while back. So that's interesting. I guess we'll see where the three of these guys. I don't know if this is technically part of the Intercontinental scene still, or if this is kind of off on its own now. Pete Dunne being added to that would be absolutely madness. So we will see. You can only make that scene so big. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Then we have what ends up basically being a squash match. Sonya Deville and Zelina Vega. But yeah, the match kind of expected to be a little bit more back and forth, but Shayna ended up catching Zelina on the side and stomped her arm, and then Sonya hit her with the Devil's Advocate, which I'm not crazy about the finisher. I think it's a little weak. I think she should probably at least do like a spin with it or something, but maybe I'm being too critical there. They basically get saved by Kaden and Katana, as well as Lyra, who come in to help Zelina. But the faction, Sonya Deville's faction, did not look intimidating in the slightest. They appear to be here for the long haul, or at least, a force to be reckoned with at the very, very least. And then next, we end up having Braun Strowman versus Damian Priest. But before that, we finally get a face-to-face with Damian and Gunther. Gunther basically questions the reign of Damian Priest and says that Damian Priest says while he was being handed everything for his reigns, Gunther's reigns, he was basically barely holding on and getting by You know, not doing well basically was the gist of it. So we have the entitled versus the hardworking, I guess, is the angle they're going with there. It's an interesting one, but yeah, I think everyone's ready for that. Can Gunther finally take the title that we all believe he's destined for? We shall find out in just a couple weeks now. Um, yeah, pretty hard hitting affair between these two. I think two heavyweights. I think about what you'd expect. And then obviously Damian Priest gets the win with South of Heaven on Braun, which is pretty impressive in itself. KP, what are your thoughts on the finally getting sort of face to face? Rhea Liv, all the segments that they go throughout the night. Sheamus beating Big Bronson Reed. What do you think about that? And the faction of Sonya Deville, they appear to be here for a while, right?
Yeah, I think Raw opened up really strongly here, to be fair. I think, going across the multitude of these segments here, I think if you start off with, obviously, what we went through at the very beginning, Rhea Ripley opening up the show, I think you mentioned it as well. This was a really good way to kickstart Monday Night Raw, because you've got these two women who are involved in one of the hottest stories going on Monday nights, and probably even in the entirety of WWE at the moment. Just giving Rhea that platform just to basically reintroduce herself. She's back, she's ready, she wants Liv. Clear intentions right there. And I really, really did rate this segment. And it was nice to sort of see them going back and forth a little bit here and there. Obviously, Titantron to, women in ring, not quite face to face, but it's good to see that they're making the first initial steps towards that, because this match is going to go hard. It's going to be great, right? Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's the case anyway. But yeah, the intensity is starting to rise up now. And now that we've got both women in the fray, Dom's being a little bit, in the middle between the two of them, it certainly creates an interesting dynamic that I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all just comes to a head. It should be very, very good. But yeah, very, very hot storyline. Loving it at the moment. And I think, that platform for Rhea to open up the show, just to really bring it to begin with, I was a really big fan of that. Yeah, Sheamus and Bronson Reed, I was quite surprised by the majority of all this. I think, these two guys obviously very heavy hitting themselves and, put on a decent enough match. Sheamus getting the win, but it was like afterwards that was the most confusing part for me, because obviously Pete Dunne, the week before, Sheamus was sort of like come to his aid, and Pete was having none of it. Fair enough, he held him responsible, obviously, the breakup of the Brawling Brutes, and then this week it would be a lot different, because Pete Dunne would come out and he'd actually pretend to sort of save Sheamus from Bronson Reed, and then would lay him out and let Bronson just dismantle Sheamus afterwards. So that's quite interesting. That is quite interesting. I think, they maybe teased that they could actually be sort of like teaming together again. But actually, no, it's quite the opposite. Pete Dunne is he's transitioning into probably a heel, right? I suppose with that. It's a heel turn, I suppose you could say, which is quite interesting considering he literally just come off the back of teaming with Tyler Bate, who is now, injured. So yeah, it's quite the transition. Very, very quick acting from WWE there, like putting him into that new position. But it's quite interesting for sure. The faction between Sonya, Zoe, Shayna, I think they've got a lot of potential there. I really, really do. I like the fact that they're essentially not taking anything. They're just going to come out here. They're going to cause havoc. They're going to wreck up shop. And that's exactly what happened to Zelina Vega. Just wrong place at the wrong time, perhaps for her. But yeah, I think, will they be around for a long time? Possibly so. It depends how they're handled. We've seen women's factions, have a little bit of, misbooking perhaps. If you're looking at Damage Control or whatever, Kabuki Warriors. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's one of those weird ones. So I really, really do hope that they do get the investment in them, because I've always been a really big fan of Shayna Baszler. I think that especially she is just absolutely brilliant when she's given the creative freedom to do what she likes. And then Zoe Stark, I think, has tremendous amounts of potential as well. I really, really do. She's obviously still quite new on the scene, so I think give her the time. She's going to do very well for herself. And Sonya Deville, one of those women who I've never really seen like an awful lot of. Like I felt like every time she gets into like a little bit of a flow, she's suddenly no longer involved. Whether that's for personal reasons or injuries or whatever, you can say whatever. But I mean, look, hey, if this is going to go the distance, then that'd be great. I'm excited to see what happens there. And then in that, Damian Priest and Braun Strowman, and obviously Gunther beforehand as well. That's also really interesting. Damian Priest now essentially a face, right? playing the face role against Gunther. Yeah, the segment between the two of them, Gunther, referencing the hard times that Damian Priest has gone through in his life, coming up from the streets essentially is what was discussed in that one. I think it was an interesting choice, but in order to make Damian to basically be the babyface of the situation, they're gonna have to make Gunther be a lot more aggressive, and I guess that's what they've done. That's the direction they've gone in. And the match itself against Braun Strowman, it was good enough to go by, I suppose. It was quite impressive. Damian Priest defeating Braun Strowman in relatively quick fashion. I wouldn't say it was like quick, but it was, it was like a long, heavy-paced match or anything for like a duration. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're trying their best to bring up Damian Priest in a sense of credibility before this Gunther match, and let's see if he can continue that in the following weeks.
Yeah, you raise a good point with Pete Dunne, and it is interesting how quickly, teaming with Tyler Bate, and all of a sudden now he's a heel again. Which, don't get me wrong, I think Pete Dunne makes a substantially better heel than does a face. But interesting because they seem to have a bit of momentum there with Tyler Bate. So it is interesting how quick they pulled the trigger to get him back, on his own. But I agree, he's very much a single. I believe they both are a singles talent. But I feel like maybe, I guess we don't know the extent of the injury, but maybe that's a reason for it, if it's going to be quite some time. But yeah, with Sonya, I feel like Sonya's always kind of been in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think Shayna and Ronda coming in kind of overshadowed what was going to be her gimmick in the first place, which was the MMA background. So I think she kind of got a bad foot there. So she's basically had to reinvent herself. I think she does wonderful work on the mic, and obviously Shayna and Zoe both have loads of potential. So I think continuing to build that women's tag division is, something that's good for everyone. I think most people would probably agree that's definitely the worst division in wrestling, or at least WWE, I guess we should say. So it's good that they're putting in some work there. So let's move on to the next events of the night, which we would see basically the fallout, or if you will, the not yet participated rivalry between Sonya's faction and Kaden and Katana, which you think the face heel dynamic there, the heels kind of seem substantially stronger to me at the moment. I don't. Maybe Kaden and Katana have. I appreciate what they can do in the ring, but they definitely haven't been booked very strongly from either a win-loss record or just make us interested in you stance. So obviously Sonya's faction yet again gets the win here. Yeah, I think it's kind of further cementing, hey, we're here, and we're not messing around. So between them, the Unholy Union, Kabuki Warriors / faction control or damage control, I think yeah, I love to see that. Love to see them getting built up. Then next we have Drew McIntyre and Adam Pearce in the middle of the ring, which is kind of strange in and of itself. Drew's supposed to be suspended. Comes in with Adam, and then Adam proceeds to bring in a couple of referees. Adam's request is simple: apologize. Apologize. That's all you have to do, and then we'll lift suspension. Obviously, Drew doesn't do it, so Adam says, "All right, your suspension is continued." Drew temper once again causes him, starts attacking referees again, and then we see Seth Rollins come back to hold us over till CM Punk is clear to wrestle, I guess. I think everyone knows our opinions on that whole thing. But anyway, Seth's here. Seth interferes to a really hot reaction. The whole dynamic with this thing is so strange. Drew's getting screwed over and still somehow the heel. It's a bit of an interesting dynamic. But anyways, yeah, Seth's here, and he basically pushes Drew out of the ring, and that's that. We'll continue this till SummerSlam, I guess. I guess CM Punk, whenever he's clear to wrestle, I guess. It's an awkward one. Anyways, then we get a glimpse, not pictured here, we get a glimpse of the Pat McAfee show. If you all don't watch it, I highly suggest it. If you're a sports fan at all, he does great work, and he's just as funny on his show as he is He's a little more serious, but just as funny there as he is on Raw. Anyways, they basically show the segment to where Eric Rowan gets a tape delivered to him that includes Eric Rowan. And basically, he goes through an emotional promo about how he lost his family, and now the Wyatt Six has given him purpose again. Pretty emotional promo. And I feel like this is a topic we could talk about forever, as typically it does kind of work with them. I personally feel like with the entrance of Bo Dallas, which we'll talk about just a little more here in a moment, I personally feel like maybe we've rushed the exposure. I want to say exposure, but basically the showing who they are. I think we all know and knew who they were, but it feels like it takes a little bit of the away from the Wyatt Sick. I don't know. You can weigh in on that, KP, but I just feel like it takes a bit away from them. But anyways, come back to that here in just a second. Then we have Dirty Dom versus Jey Uso. Basically, Jey Uso intervened earlier. Basically told him that Mommy was single again and give him a call. Pretty entertaining segment. Jay's I want to say obsession, but definitely keen interest in Mommy continues on pretty good. And after Jay gets the win, who of course Dom loses when Liv tries to interfere, and then Mommy comes in and chases her off. See that time and time again. You can see Dom and Rhea at the top of the ramp, and Jay gives them the calming signs. So I don't think that's going anywhere, but it's still entertaining nonetheless. And then we see Chad Gable come out to the ring, basically did what he said he was going to do, and he calls out Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas comes out to the ring, and Bo Dallas is then laid out by a surprise attack by the Creed brothers. Creed brothers now appear to be working with Chad Gable and just pretty viciously lay out Bo Dallas, who of course is laughing the entire time, and no matter how much they're beating up Bo Dallas, he just continues to laugh. Eventually, Wyatt Six shows up and kind of chase them out of the ring, and then you can see they're kind of all showed in the middle of the ring there. KP, what are your thoughts on the segments here? How do you feel about the Wyatt Six and how they are kind of being portrayed here in the direction they appear to be headed? And yeah, what are your thoughts on Seth Drew? Any other thoughts you have?
I think this is like one of two ways. I think when you come to the Wyatt Six, you look at them and you think, wow, like this is so incredible. Like what they're sort of like being portrayed as. I think is brilliant in that sense. But then like I do hear a lot of criticism. I do hear a lot of feedback on the faction, and basically just saying like, like maybe like they shouldn't be exposing them this early. They shouldn't be doing this. They should be doing this. They should be doing that. For me personally, I think that the aura of the Wyatt Six isn't really going to go away. I think it's going to stay quite strong, regardless of whether they're showing the faces of them or not. I think pretty much anybody who knows about these guys knew who everybody in the group was up until their reveal, the massacre. I think they probably most of us have figured that out by that point anyway. For those of us that didn't, it was like very soon afterwards that it became abruptly clear. But yeah, I think if anything, I think maybe they're going a little too slow about the whole thing. Like only a very small criticism there. I think in terms of like their general presence, I think they're absolutely wonderful. I think they're doing a great job of just providing such a really interesting scene between the group of them. Obviously, they've clearly targeted Chad Gable for whatever reason, and now you've got the Creeds involved as well. That seems to be setting up for something, perhaps. I don't know, maybe it could be set up for a 3-3 at some point, maybe, but that could be an option going forward, just to get, a match involved between them. But No, I think that in terms of the revealing of them, I don't think it takes away anything as such from them. I'm very intrigued to hear about everything that's going on behind the scenes. So, like, the pictures they're painting, why they joined, what solace they took in joining up with this faction, maybe Bo's influence on the whole mental scenes between the lot of them. I think it's definitely very, very interesting. So obviously we've got to see a little bit of Rowan, and he was very emotional in that, as you said. And yeah, I think it's just like a nice way of just, getting into a little bit of the behind the scenes with them, just sort of like seeing exactly what it is that, their reasons are for being there. And I think they're gonna like roll with that, and it's gonna basically be sort of like a domino effect going in for a few weeks' time. We'll get a little bit maybe of Abby the Witch and Huskus and Mercy going forward as well. I think it's going to be really good to see. Don't want to talk too much about that one because obviously you've got loads of stuff still to cover. Drew and Seth, and let's talk about that for a moment. I think this is something that I've been quite critical of in the last few weeks, obviously with CM Punk especially. But Drew and Seth, feels very placeholder-esque, right? CM Punk not being on Raw this week. Is he injured? Is he not? Until he says he's cleared, he's injured, right? So that's the situation that it is at the moment. And it seems like they're trying their best to really drag this one out. I'm not going to say it's boring, because by any means necessary, it is absolutely not. It's very, very interesting for me. But I think they are so heavily reliant on CM Punk and Drew McIntyre at the moment that without them both being fit and healthy, they have no option but to delay, but to postpone, but to do this, do that, and essentially stretch things out that, if Punk was fit, wouldn't be happening whatsoever. So, the suspension, possibly being lifted, and then obviously not being lifted, and, Drew acting out, and Seth coming in to, make the save for Adam Pearce and the referees, whatever. I don't know. It does seem like a step backwards, but it's interesting to see where Seth does fit into this. Like, he's trying his best to be involved each week with CM Punk, with Drew McIntyre. And, I suppose it does open up questions regarding his involvement in all of this. So, I don't know. Definitely interesting. Like, questions for sure that I still have that aren't answered. But, I don't know. It just does feel like a little bit like we're walking through mud at the moment. I want to quickly get out of that, and we'll get onto dry land. But something that is very, very interesting as well, entertaining. Jey Uso, right? Jey Uso and Dominic Mysterio. That match was what it needed to be. There was no way Dom was going to beat Jey Uso. With his sort of swagger at the moment, his enthusiasm, the love that he gets from the WWE universe. I think it was obviously going to be a win for Jey Uso. But I think this was a nice little moment. I think, to be fair, because you have this funny little thing with Jey and Rhea Ripley, and is there something there? Personally, I don't think there really is. I don't know where they've got this from. It just seems to be brought out of nowhere, but it's definitely quite funny. And then obviously you've got Dom, who is just completely lost right now, right? He's confused, bless him. He hasn't got a clue what to do, doesn't know how to act, doesn't know who to talk to, and he's saying the wrong things to the wrong people. And isn't it? Actions have consequences. We've seen that in other segments, definitely in this situation as well. But interesting to see what happens next week, tomorrow. On Raw, whether they're going to continue this sort of teasing of like a Jey Rhea type thing going on. But we did have a moment, I think, backstage where I think Rhea did eventually say to Dom, like, you're mine. So I think there's still something there between those two, right? But I think with the women's faction as well, I think I mentioned that a moment ago. This has potential for sure. It really, really does, and they are building the tag team division up bits here and there. It's been pretty barren for a little while, but it's nice to see them making efforts to build up a few tags, factions here and there. And I think this is the next step in that process, right? It's like get the depth within the rosters. And hey, look, Katana and Kaden, they have been handled pretty poorly since losing the tag titles. I don't think we've really seen much of them at all. Maybe this could bring out a better side of them. I don't know. It's quite early to say. But hey, look, more depth is good, right?
You raised some interesting points about the Wyatt Six. I certainly was okay with them having their identity revealed. I just thought maybe it would come down a bit later. But that being said, I think certainly kind of opens some new doors for them. It gives it that other dynamic. which I'm all for. Kind of limit them to the mask only option. I think does limit their options. So yeah, you make some good points on those. Yeah, poor Dom though. He's stuck between a rock and a hard place at the moment. And now that I kind of think about it and hearing you talk about Seth a little more, I kind of feel bad for him. Clearly a main event talent, but yet he's being sit here. And I think maybe this was the reason for his early return. Hadn't really thought about that till just now. Maybe it felt like it was a little too soon for him to come back. And maybe that's the reason he came back, was because they realized they weren't going to get this CM Punk Drew thing pushed off any longer, because they had done that to us for what felt like a couple months as well. Maybe that's the reason for him returning so soon. But yeah, without further ado, we head to our main event. I don't think a lot of people were going to be surprised here. What started off as a great match is, no surprise to anyone, Ilya and Sami Zayn, Intercontinental Championship. Um, but of course, we have interference by none other than Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker basically laid out everyone, continuing to be booked strong. And, the final scene of Raw is what you see here before you. Um, I don't have a ton to add here. I'll let you take over and head over to NXT if you do. Yeah, it's just, we kind of, when we see something similar with SmackDown, it feels like we've seen this before. Just kind of rotating people around. But very much what kind of feels like a copy paste from what we've seen in a few other weeks for this particular scene. Now, don't get me wrong, I love all the talent that's currently in here, but yeah, I don't think anyone was surprised, I guess, is my takeaway here.
Surprised? Absolutely not. I mean, to be fair, earlier in the night, Braun Breaker did say that he was going to do exactly this. He said to Adam Pearce, look, I'm going to get involved in that match and I'm going to shut the damn thing down. And, Adam Pearce is like, all right, security, let's get you out of here and stop you from doing that. Was that going to work? No. No, it was never going to work. He probably dismantled the security guys and, he just waltzed back in and he did exactly what he said he would do. He would destroy the main event. And that's Braun Breaker in a nutshell at the moment, right? Destroying everything in his path. Whatever he can do, anybody stopping him from succeeding, he's going to run right through them. And yeah, I think you make a great point about the copy and paste factor in this one, and it is a theme for the week. I think maybe just so much more with the main roster than in the NXT show. But yeah, it does seem like we're doing the same thing, but just in a very, very slightly different way. Rotating people around, as you said, and yeah, just sort of like doing very, very similar things with these people. Not to say that I have a problem with it, because they're building this Intercontinental Championship up very, very well at the moment. I think that they're raising the stakes of it when we just got off the back of Gunther and his legendary run. Sami being involved now, obviously a very different champion to that of Gunther. And I think with the quality and the talent that's been brought up from NXT being thrown into this Intercontinental Championship, usually you might think, oh, well, they're just throwing like these new guys in and they're just giving Sami, or the current IC champion at the moment, doesn't even have to be Sami Zayn. They're giving the current Intercontinental champion just an easy ride to begin with. But hey, this is not like that, is it? Right? You've got Braun Breaker, who is an absolute bull in a china shop. You've got Ilya Dragunov, who is by far one of the most impressive WWE superstars that they have at the moment, right? I think he's just absolutely tremendous. He can take so much punishment, technically gifted. He's the Mad Dragon, right? And he delivers on that every single week. He's just tremendous. What a tremendous athlete both these men are. And thrown into this Intercontinental Championship team with someone like Sami Zayn, technically gifted as well. Someone who's very, very over with the crowd right now and, one of the top guys. I think, this scene is extremely heavy on talent and it's absolutely wonderful to watch. So how things get handled going forward from here on is going to be brilliant to see. But hey, look, a little bit less copy and paste, maybe a little bit more in-ring action. We didn't see much of this matchup on Raw because of ads, because of being the main event, not much time left. Would have loved to see a little bit more between Ilya and Sami and not be interrupted by ad breaks. But hey, look, it is what it is. This is the situation. That it could be setting up for a triple threat contest, maybe at SummerSlam. That to me sounds particularly fascinating, and I can't wait to see if that does happen. So, moving on then into NXT, let's talk about it. So we would start off the Tuesday night show with the Rascals. They would be reunited in the ring, and they would go up against the team of Gallus. So all three members, Joe Coffey, Mark Coffey, and Wolfgang. It was quite the reintroduction, really, for Zachary Wentz. He would obviously be coming back to NXT last week during that Wesley almost, retirement, but quitting promo that he was giving out at the time. Nah, it didn't happen. Rascals reuniting. They would get into the action here this week off the back of that. And it was pretty damn awesome to see these guys competing. It was just brilliant. The match was great as well. Really high energy throughout the most part. The Rascals, they bring that. That's exactly what their forte is. They're going to bring the energy, going to bring the fast pace action. And yeah, really good contest between the six of them to start with. Rascals would defeat Gallus in the end. And Joe Hendry would make an appearance on commentary. Because why not? You say his name, he appears. That's exactly what happened. He came down on commentary and he just sort of like throw a little bit of shade towards the Gallus boys. Moving on then into other segments of the night, we had Roxanne Perez. She would cut an in-ring promo. And that would be interrupted partly way through by Tia Hale. Roxy was demanding more respect. More like volume on her as a champion, basically saying that, she deserves to be higher up on people's agendas. And Tia Hale would come on down after essentially Roxy would say that Tia isn't a threat to her and her title. She would talk about the likes of Julia and Stephanie Becker, basically saying how, I've seen the opinions online. I've seen these people say that, look, when these women get here, they're going to take a title from me. Well, that ain't going to happen because, I'm the best thing that this title has to offer at the moment. And, I'm very good at what I do. Tia Hale, she come down. She would have a little bit of back and forth between herself and Roxanne Perez. They'd have a bit of a discussion. Things would get a little bit heated. And then eventually they'd have a little bit of a brawl, ending in Tia Hale locking in the Kimura lock on Roxanne Perez. Ridge Holland would have to make the save here. He'd have to come down and sort of like separate the two women, dragging Tia Hale off of Roxanne Perez, and that would essentially see out that little segment there. But hey, look, Tia Hale, if she really isn't a threat to Roxanne Perez, she's made it look like she could potentially be one in this segment. We also have the likes of Javon Evans. He would go into a matchup against Brooks Jensen after Brooks's attack on Javon last week, costing him his spot in that main event tag team match that Joe Hendry would fill in for. And this would be an interesting matchup. During the contest, Sean Spears would arrive. He would cause Josh Briggs to get up in his face. And Brooks Jensen, he'd come out the ring. He'd basically tell Josh to, back down. Let's not deal with this. Evans would, though, take advantage of that moment. He would hit a diving move out to ringside, taking down Brooks Jensen. He'd follow that up with a series of attacks, leading to the victory in the end. And Javon would score the victory. Brooks wouldn't settle for that, though. He'd assault Javon after the bell before Josh Briggs would have to separate the two men, basically saying, continuing this whole, you're my responsibility. I put my my word out for you. I put myself on the line. Show some respect back to me here, buddy, all right? So that would basically be that segment there, done and done. And then we also have a impromptu NXT Championship match, because why not? Ethan Page had a bit of a segment backstage with Ava. They've had this back and forth for some time now. And Ora Mensah would be involved in that one as well. Ethan would basically be told that he's going to defend his NXT Championship tonight. He'd pick the opponent, and he would choose Dante Chen. And that would be the matchup here. Ethan Page up against Dante Chen, and it would be Ethan Page who would successfully defeat Dante to retain his NXT Championship. After the contest, Oro Mensah would come in and attack Ethan Page, trying to prove that he can be good enough for an NXT title opportunity against Page going forward. Ethan would quickly counter, hit Mensah with a big DDT, and then Page would look to leave the ring. He'd be like, right, this is done. I'm going to head off back now. See you later. That wouldn't put Mensah down for very long, though, because he would get back up again. He would attack the NXT champion, and he'd drag him into the ring, hit a series of attacks, and then would go for a pin in the middle of the ring on Ethan Page to prove that he can get a 3 count on him. So, yeah, I think with this sort of like segment here, we've got people returning, we've got people trying to big themselves up into a championship opportunity, and then we've got a little bit of chaos between Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen, who, bit of a loose cannon in Brooks. But what do you make of these segments here, Nick? What are your thoughts on all of these in terms of these NXT title pictures with their new challenges essentially seeming to be coming into the play, and then obviously the reignition of the Rascals? What did you think?
Yeah, it's my first exposure to the Rascals. I had not seen them before, but I certainly liked what I saw and what the opening match provided. Roxanne Perez, I feel like I sing the same song every week. She's the prodigy for a reason. I actually kind of want, if Tia gets this opportunity here to challenge Roxanne, I kind of want Roxanne to win it pretty convincingly. Nothing against Chase U and Tia Hale and all that. More so just the fact that it took her, I can't recall the exact number, I think it was 5 or 6 Pop Rocks to beat Lola. Still a bit salty about that one. So I kind of wanted to gain some momentum back, like maybe just like one and be done. Just that way it kind of then feels like, well, Lola's just that good, as opposed to her finisher's not. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where that goes. I'm 99% sure that Roxanne's holding on to her title. I don't believe Tia is a credible threat. I think that's the only reason we got this, is to make her look like maybe she has somewhat of a chance. And then Ethan Page winning there, I don't think was any surprise. We had a championship match in the middle of NXT. That would have been a bit weird had we seen that title change there. Yeah, and I think clearly we know where we're headed now, or it was clearly after him. It's a bit surprising, being that we had everyone else kind of around the title picture there. Is Trick, they were all in the segment together just last week. Is Ethan done with all of them, or kind of interesting to see him kind of pop up? Or are we adding one more person?
For a little while, we actually did see Roxanne Perez hitting the Pop Rocks and then literally transitioning into a crossface immediately afterwards. I'd like to see her bring that back, because that was quite effective. That was like a more vicious side, which I think with her, a heel persona now, works a lot better for her. So I think I'd like to see that return, because it didn't really get like the legs on it. And I think, it was doing pretty well from what I saw anyway. It only used it for like a matter of a few weeks or maybe a month or something. But I'd like to see that come back and be a bit more effective, because that was really, really good. But yeah, hey, you got your first exposure to the Rascals. I mean, they're pretty fun, right? They're very energetic, and they offer a lot for this tag team division. How about we quickly just move on then regarding all of the other action that took place on NXT. Let's start off with Tatum Paxley and Izzy Dame. So they would have a matchup, and it would be Tatum Paxley in the end who would defeat Izzy Dame. And honestly, that's probably Tatum's first win in a long, long time. So this is a much-needed victory for her, Izzy Dame, she hasn't been on the scene anywhere near as long as Paxley has. So this was really good to see Tatum actually get a win for the first time in a long time. Tatum would take advantage of a distracted Izzy Dame in order to get the victory, because Wendy Chu would be at ringside. And yeah, this very demonic side of Wendy Chu that we've seen for a little while now, it's certainly quite interesting. It didn't really end in the match, though, because after the contest, we would see Wendy Chu give a doll to Tatum Paxley. Wouldn't have a head. This is the doll that I think Tatum had last week, having a bit of a crazy scenario backstage, launching on the floor. Wendy would come pick it up. Basically, just returning it. So, yeah, interesting scenario there. Tatum would put the head back on the doll, and that would basically be that segment done. But it's a very strange relationship there. Maybe, the two mindsets of these two women maybe are meshing, right? You've got the demonic, almost creepy side of Wendy Chu, and then you've got the more eccentric, bizarre style of Tatum Paxley. Maybe those maybe opposites do attract in the situation. I don't know if something's maybe getting started there between these two as an alliance, but it could maybe seem something like that. But yeah, quite interesting for sure. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that going forward in a couple of moments. Lola Vice and JC Jane, they would have a match on NXT as well. And Lola Vice would get a victory here. So getting back into the win section after losing to Roxanne Perez, we mentioned that a couple of moments ago. And it would be all about what happened afterwards. So Fallon Henley, she would basically storm the ring. She would attack Lola Vice from behind post-match, and Nyx would join her almost instantly. Lola would show some fight, tries to fight them both off, before JC Jane would then get involved as well. So essentially 3-on-1 situation. Wouldn't take too long though after that before Sol Ruka and Carmen Petrovic, they would storm the ring to give some support, and even the odds essentially for Lola Vice. So yeah, this sort of like alliance then between JC Jane, Fallon Henley, and Jasmine Nyx seems to be getting to the next stage. Like week by week, they sort of like get a little bit more on the same page. Seems to be the case here. Could lead to a 3-3 maybe next week between these 6 women, I'm going to assume, or at least some point down the line anyway, in the near future. In our next little bit of competition, we would have a 3-3 tag team matchup where we would have the OCs, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, and Michin. They would be going up against OTMs, Bronco Nima, Lucian Price, and Jada Parker. So this one would spiral out of control a little bit here and there. It would get to a situation where Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, they would have OTM isolators. They'd have one of the guys out the ring, one of them in the ring. This would be literally just moments after Michin would hit and eat defeat. Believe it was on Lucian Price in this situation. And the numbers game would catch up eventually, even though it's even numbers, but they would sort of like do our isolating OTM. They would be able to sort of like get just a 2-on-1 situation here, and they would hit the Magic Killer to pick up the victory here in this match. It was a much needed win for the OC. Absolutely much needed. They don't really have a lot of opportunities recently where they do get those wins. So this is a nice little opportunity for them to get some momentum going. Can they continue that? Can they keep the ball rolling? We'll have to obviously wait and see. But these two have had an absolutely heated feud for a little while now. And hey, I don't know if this is going to be the end. Every time I think it might be, it doesn't appear to be. So, the OC just getting back into the win section there. But regarding all these segments here, Nick, what are your thoughts on all of these? Especially with the whole Wendy Chu and Tatum Paxley. That's like the more interesting part for me personally.
Yeah, it was nice to see Tatum get a win. As you mentioned, I feel like basically since I've started watching NXT again, can't recall the last time she's won. So with this new, well, I guess not new, but with this kind of partnership with Wendy, or whatever we're going to call that, I guess. Very interesting. And I think further to what's shown here is her interaction with Kalani later on in the evening. Kalani walks by, she has that doll, and Kalani just being that extreme baby face, almost cringeworthy, I dare to say. But basically wishes her luck and whatever the hell she's doing. And then Tatum, not really happy with the interaction, turns around, puts the blonde doll down that she's holding there, and then picks up a doll that looks remarkably similar to Kalani. So maybe that's where that's headed. Maybe we've identified our next North American women's challenger. That would certainly be interesting, especially if she has Wendy Chu behind her back as well. No complaints from me there. The faction between Fallon and then up against Lola, and people coming in to help her, I think it's just kind of a testament to how stacked that division is. Because honestly, and similar to what we saw with Damian Priest and his promo with Gunther, kind of similar to what Lola did before her Roxanne match and her kind of surprise face turn. The face faction doesn't really make a lot of sense in my opinion, but I think it's just because they have so much talent. They're trying to figure out a way to get them all on weekly television, which is fine. It's good for them, it's good for us. We get to see everyone that way.
Alrighty, so on the back of all that then, how about we go into our main event? And that was for the North American Championship. We would see Obafemi defending his title up against Duke Hudson of Chase University. And this was obviously stemmed from last week. Ridge Holland doing a little bit of Riz behind the scenes, being able to get some opportunities for Tia Hale and for Duke Hudson. This was obviously the bigger of the two in this particular moment because this would be happening literally as soon as possible. It wouldn't take long for this one to carve out. So, North American Championship on the line. It was a pretty hard-fought contest between these two men. Honestly, really, really enjoyed this main event. Thought it was a lot of fun to watch. Both men really, really tested each other, pushed each other to another level. And I think, honestly, this is probably one of Duke Hudson's best matches on NXT. I don't remember the last time I saw him in this position where he was really able to just get a flow like he did. He was really pushing over Femi to certain heights at one point, and he was just absolutely going for it. And it was great to see him in a bigger picture here. Femi would ultimately get the victory in the end. He would defeat Duke Hudson to retain his North American Championship, but it wouldn't be the easiest match for him, and that was quite nice to see. We've seen Femi obviously manhandling people in the past, quite easy for him, quite comfortable. This one was a little bit different. Duke's a bigger guy. He's got a bit more about him. Obviously, a very different matchup to this and the most recent one against Wes Lee. Can't really toss Duke Hudson around as easily as you could with Wes Lee. But it was nice to see, two big men going at it for that title. And I think the right man probably did win here. Really enjoying this Femi run as the NXT North American champion. And he just continues to impress week by week, I think. What did you make of this matchup, Nick? Did you enjoy this one as much as I did? Thought it was a pretty heavy-hitting contest. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good match as well. I think if you were to ask me who I thought had the most potential in Chase U, I actually would point to Duke Hudson. I believe he has the look, and I believe he has the kind of complete package. But yeah, it's nice seeing Oba face someone that you can't toss around, and that's kind of a rare occurrence because he usually is much bigger than his opponents. But yeah, I think Duke Hudson has arguably the most potential out of the group. I don't know who's going to take the title from Oba at this point. Yeah, because we kind of talked about that last time on their PLE match with him and Wes Lee. Like, whoever loses this is probably going to go straight to the main. Well, we didn't see that happen with Wes Lee, and I don't know who's going to take it from Oba. Yeah, it's just he continues to be dominant, getting good for him because I personally kind of gave this title reign probably a placeholder status, and Wes Lee couldn't even take it back from him. So props to Oba, he continues to impress.
Yeah, he's very, very impressive. And just following up on that, I also don't have a clue who's going to dethrone this man. Like, it's going to take something special to do so. I just do not see that at the moment. But hey, really, really big fan of all that's going on here with the North American Championship. Femi is something special. He's a talent for sure. All right, guys. So how about we head on to Friday Night SmackDown, the culmination of our weekly recap. So Friday night brought us a fair few things. Let's start off with the opener. Cody Rhodes. He would open up the show in the presence of boxer Terrence Crawford. During Cody Rhodes' promo, we would actually have Austin Theory and Grayson Waller show up to interrupt him. Quite surprising at the time. I did not put the pieces together. Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, they'd essentially come out and they would blame Cody Rhodes for them being attacked by Jacob Fatu a week before. I mean, personally, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I did not add those two situations up. But hey, that is what it is. That's the situation. Austin and Grayson, coming out there to basically just point the finger at Cody Rhodes. And they would demand, a little bit of payback from him. They would get into a little bit of a brawl shortly after getting into the ring. And the brawl would essentially span to ringside. Cody Rhodes would get thrown out. He would go over towards Terrence Crawford, who would give Cody Rhodes a steel chair. He would then fend off Grayson Waller and Austin Theory at the same time, using the steel chair to even the odds. So that would be the opening promo there. That would eventually spiral into a tag team contest later on in the night, where Cody Rhodes would be forced to find a tag team partner of his own. So who would that tag partner be? We weren't to know until the main event. How about we talk about the first match of the night that was Andrade up against Carmelo Hayes. I don't know about you, Nick, but I thought this was an absolute spectacle. These guys really impressed in that men's Money in the Bank ladder match, and they followed up here in this show as well. They had a cracking one-on-one contest between the two of them. Two very highly talented men here. Carmelo Hayes, fresh on the scene since the WWE draft on the main roster, and Andrade coming back recently, since the Royal Rumble he returned. I think both these men are looking to looking to find their place on the main roster very, very quickly here. And it was a great contest between the two of them. Very hard fought, very even affair. And just in the end, Andrade having a little bit more in the tank than Carmelo Hayes with the victory also for El Idolo. But it was a great, great matchup. Really enjoyed this one. High flying, energetic, parts of power involved as well from more so Andrade than Mello. But hey, look, the charisma these two had in the ring together, their styles really, really did work together very well. We also had Bianca Belair. She would go one-on-one with Chelsea Green. And by the time it took me to basically say that, the match was essentially over. This wasn't exactly a quick one. Bianca would come out the gates very, very strongly. She would dominate. Chelsea Green would get out of the way during a move, and essentially it would break down to a point where Chelsea Green would roll up Bianca Belair. She'd reverse the roll up, and then that would be the 1, 2, 3 there and then. I don't really have much else to say about that one. But what I do have more to say is about the United States Championship. Logan Paul and LA Knight. They would have a contract signing in the middle of the ring. We've seen the situation in the last few weeks where Logan Paul hasn't been showing up. He's not been at SmackDown. LA Knight's been wanting this match for a little bit of time now, and he knows that he's earned it. That's the most annoying thing for LA Knight. And now would be the contract signing. So Nick Aldis would oversee this one. He would be there just to, get in between the two of them to make sure that nothing happened. Guys, it's a contract signing. Things are always going to happen in those, right? There's always going to be a bit of a flow between the two men. And that's exactly what happened here. But before we get to that, it would be a verbal back and forth between the two men. Logan would essentially leave the ring, sort of like feigning that he was going to be gone. He would then quickly rush back in once LA Knight had turned his back. He would attack Knight, and then Knight would overcome that attack to almost hit a BFT. That would send Logan Paul rolling out the ring, out of harm's way, just to avoid that attack. But yeah, your standard contract signing here, I suppose. Logan would sign that contract. We're going to get that match at SummerSlam between him and LA Knight for the United States Championship. And hey, I am very much looking forward to that match. Yeah. What about you, Nick? What did you think of all of these segments here regarding especially Andrade and Carmelo Hayes? I'm a big fan of this matchup. I don't know if you maybe enjoyed it as much as I did, but I was really, really impressed by these two men. Once again, they're impressing in the ring. And then, yeah, did you think that Grayson Waller-Austin theory, was that a little bit of a stretch? Blaming Cody for that one? What did you think?
Yeah, that one made me cock my head sideways just a bit. Like, all right, we're gonna go with that. Basically, giving us anything other than the bloodline be Cody and RKO, so to speak. Yeah, well, all right, sounds good. I'm glad you were on first for this one because I basically the Sammy treatment that you sometimes worry about giving him bias and all that. I kind of shared that similar light to Andrade, very, 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 very close to my heart, and that he is one of my favorites. So of course, this match obviously did something for me, chef's kiss, so to speak, and yeah, this felt like a PLE match right on the middle of SmackDown. Both of these guys, and I'm gonna tie this a bit to the LA Knight Logan Paul segment because I'm glad we're finally getting that match, and I'm glad that LA Knight's going to take the title off of Logan because Andrade and Carmelo should absolutely be in that U.S. Title picture instead of this kind of seems like a reoccurring theme here, but this LA Knight Logan Paul thing that we've been seeing teased for months. And I'm all for long-term storytelling. Don't misinterpret. But it feels like we have been on cruise control to a lot of these stories through Maine, which is strange because we've had plenty of PLEs. So it's not like we're working on a Mania build where they have 2 months to work with or something. But yeah, it's unfortunate because Andrade and Carmelo should absolutely be in that scene, putting on a match like that. They have no right to not at least be in contention for some sort of title. But yeah, you're right exactly on the Bianca Chelsea Green bit. What feels like a build to the tag match, and on the other side of the coin of Raw, where we saw the build of the women's tag match, kind of. I guess we'll call this that because the Unholy Union came on and gave a quick promo. And I get it, Raw is an hour longer, so they should have the longer segments. but probably could have gave them a little more time here.
Yeah, it definitely felt a little rushed, and obviously that was the case because the match was so short. Would have liked to have seen a bit more from Chelsea Green, because I think she's been very impressive recently, and I don't know, just being that quick, I wasn't particularly happy about the situation. Like, obviously I expected Chelsea to lose to Bianca, but I don't know, give her a few more minutes, that would have been at least something I think they could have done. But hey, look, Andrade and Mello, yeah, all the plaudits from myself there. Absolutely loved it. I think when we get to these championship matches, Logan Paul and LA Knight is a good example there. Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, whatever, like we're talking here. Do they really have to be at these big events? They have to be at SummerSlam? Can they not be at like a Clash at the Castle? Can they not be at a Money in the Bank? Do we have to have these take place on the big four, the big five, whatever we're calling them nowadays? I don't know. I feel like that's essentially the mindset here from the current WWE programming. I feel like, are we going to have a massive title change outside of the big shows? Maybe we won't have them very much anymore. I think the most recently done one was Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch out in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. Like, I would like to see maybe these other shows getting a bit more love in terms of, like, because I think we all expect Logan Paul to probably lose against LA Knight so that we can get a bit of a more permanent United States Championship scene on SmackDown. But I mean, like, I think we could have that on these other shows. It doesn't have to be in the big ones. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe sometimes the stories do feel a little bit sort of dragged out. But ultimately, very excited to see that match take place, which is essentially what they want us to feel. And it is working, so I get it. Okay, so how about then we move on to the last couple of segments for the night. And we would have a one-on-one match between Michin and Tiffany Stratton. This didn't really last as a one-on-one matchup, though, because there'd be a whole lot going on the outside. Tiffany Stratton would make her way down with Nia Jax. They would, walk to the ring together. We've seen that coalition in the last number of months between those two, and that would be no different here. So it would get to a point in the contest where Nia Jax, she'd be minding her own business on the outside, and Bayley, the women's champion, she would come down, clearly frustrated about what would take place earlier on in the night between those two. They would have a little bit of a backstage back and forth, like an interview style thing between each other. And yeah, clearly the tensions were running high still into the contest. Bayley would make herself known during the contest here, and she would attack Nia Jax. She would send her over the barricade, and she would then target Tiffany's Money in the Bank contract. She would dismantle the thing. She would batter it against the announce table. She'd open it up and she'd slam it against it. She would stomp on it. She'd hit it against steel steps. She would try anything to really damage the briefcase here. And Tiffany Stratton, obviously very aware of the situation. She'd be extremely distracted, essentially forgetting about her match with Michin for the time being. And that would allow Michin to go for a roll-up, and that would actually get her to seal a victory over Tiffany Stratton. So quite the interesting choice there. Had absolutely no idea they were going to go down this route. As soon as the matchup was announced, I was like, oh, okay, Tiffany's going to beat Michin, no problem. Yeah, that's fine. But hey, look, clearly there are other things going on here. I think damaging the contract especially maybe opens up for Tiff to, glitz it into her own way, give it a little bit of a makeover. She's discussed that previously, in the last few weeks anyway. And I think that sort of sets that up for that, perhaps. But going on to the main event, we would have that tag team contest, and surprise, surprise, it would not be anybody else. It would be Kevin Owens that would tag with Cody Rhodes, right? It was always going to be. I think everyone pretty much knew that situation was going to happen. Kevin Owens coming up to aid Cody, and that would be enough for Cody and Kevin to get the victory over A-Town Down Under. So pretty much as you expect there, decent enough match between the two of them. But it would be what would happen afterwards. That would be the biggest talking point. And kind of how we were discussing on show, I think on Monday Night Raw earlier on, this would be a little bit of copy and paste action right here, except for you're changing people around and you're doing different things with people. We would have the Bloodline make their entrance once again. They would arrive. They would make their way to Cody and Kevin, and they get into a bit of a brawl between. I think it was the 5 men at the time. Then Jacob Fatu would come on down, and he would end the chances of Cody and Kevin overcoming those numbers. And that would ultimately lead to Kevin Owens being assaulted as Cody was forced to watch, like happened last week with Randy Orton. Except this time, it wouldn't be Cody's ally that would go through the table. It would actually be Cody Rhodes who would go through the table. He'd be powerbombed through it. That would end the show. And then obviously you'd have the Bloodline doing the pose for the cameras to end the show. So yeah, I don't know. Very similar things. Very similar in terms of, the actual sort of substance here. But yeah, I don't know. They're just rotating people around, having certain people do things here and there that they didn't do last week. They changed things around. Cody went through the table this time. I'm enjoying I am enjoying the Bloodline. I am. I think it's very different. We discussed this before. It's nice to have a more vicious version. But what I do think as well is that, they clearly have like a system here, and it's a rotor-based system by the looks of things. But yeah, they've obviously taken out Randy Orton. This time they went for the champion himself. I don't know. Perhaps it's getting a little stale already, which isn't what you want. I'm enjoying their backstage stuff. I think, they've got a very good presence about them. But I don't know. If they put Kevin Owens through a table next week on SmackDown, then I just will not care. Straight up. It's just not gonna interest me anymore. But hey, look, it is what it is. They're building Solo against Cody. That's the natural thing. That they're doing it for the next few weeks. They're gonna have to, because SummerSlam's still a little bit away. But yeah, I don't know. Mix things up. Go on, mix things up. What did you think, Nick? What do you think of these two segments regarding Bayley coming to the aid of Mishin and allowing her to get a surprise victory? And then what are your thoughts on that main event? Do you agree with everything I've said?
One thing I wanted to add before this slide was your mention of titles getting more love on the non-Big Four, because I think I saw a bit where they stated this is the first time that both women's titles will be defended in 2024, with the exception of Mania. So that, I think that lies a problem that we've discussed before, in women's division not getting as much love as it should. But then also, I think another issue that lies within the Triple H era is that he kind of sticks to the 5-match or close to format. And while I think that's good because everyone gets time to shine, sometimes it's okay to have another match and maybe take a little time from another, or we can also have a longer pay-per-view. With the exception of the Big Four, that we're splitting SummerSlam into 2 nights next year, or the year after. I can't recall off the top of my head, but regardless, very rare do people complain about the length of a pay-per-view. Very rarely we're going to complain about one that takes too long. But as for the segments listed here, my main takeaway from the Bayley Tiffany segment is that, as you've alluded to in prior weeks, I'm almost, I'm very sure that we're now going to get the revamped Money in the Bank briefcase, which I think we've been both looking forward to. So I'm excited to see what she can bring to that next week. We're really looking forward to that. And yeah, as we mentioned on Raw, this having a feeling of deja vu. Didn't we just see this last week? The actual tag match was great, but we all knew that the Bloodline, were going to come in, and I think this kind of points to a problem with the Bloodline, and we're seeing them every week. The first version of the Bloodline, yes, we saw them every week, and Roman's entrance kind of took the amount of time that probably half this match did in the first place. But I think the difference is Roman wasn't there every week, whereas this Bloodline is here every week, and so therefore you're going to run into problems like this where, if you do the same thing, it will seem stale. We've already seen this Bloodline. We've already seen a Bloodline. So by nature and default, we're going to see another Bloodline. We're going to think this seems stale out the gate because we've already seen something similar. So anything that ties similar is going to seem a bit redundant. So I think you need to be really careful with that. It's a very slippery slope. If you grew up during the NWO era, that's kind of what this feels like a little bit. I think maybe don't have them come to the ring every now and then. As you mentioned, their backstage promos are very good. And so maybe you can stick to that, or have them chasing each other around. But if I recall correctly, when I looked up at the clock, it was 8:30 or close to when this main event started. So that means, and I think this is a problem with SmackDown that hasn't been the better show compared to Raw for a while now. And without getting to a big thing about that, did the main event really need to be a half hour? Whereas the Raw main event got cut because of similar issue where they did the copy paste bit, but then you also had the Chelsea Green Bianca bit with the building up the tag team title that took 3 minutes. So maybe doing a better pacing throughout the night, I think would benefit all. But yeah, just need to be careful with the bloodline. Um, I would be shocked if we don't see KO move through a table next week, and I cannot wait to see the criticism of our already fickle wrestling IWC. So hopefully they do something else, but yeah, you need to be careful with that because this is something we've seen for how long now. So you need to be careful with that.
Yeah, yeah, we absolutely do need to be careful because it's a slippery slope otherwise, isn't it? Really, I think there's there's a lot to come from SummerSlam, and I feel like a lot of the stories are sort of petering into it. I think whether they've sort of they've got their clear ideas and they're ready to get there. It's just they're trying to fill those gaps in between. There seems to be a little bit of a problem. I don't know. Like I think there's something there in that perhaps, but they've got the talent, they've got the ability to do more for them. I don't know. It's just a weird situation, but I don't know. Yeah, it's odd. It really, really is odd. But yeah, that Money in the Bank contract being glammed up is going to be quite something. It's going to be Tiff's little briefcase, and she's going to like probably put a strap on it, hold it like a bag. I think she said in that interview. So yeah, I don't know. I think there are some highs and lows for sure, for definite. And yeah, you made some very, very good points about the titles maybe not being defended. As much as they possibly could do. These PLEs being their set ways. I like the PLEs. Don't get me wrong. The 5 matches are good. It's just I think maybe sometimes we can go a little bit like in a different direction. Just a little bit here and there. Not change the whole thing, but like a little bit. Add, like you said, add another match and take a little bit off from here and there. Like not every match needs to be like half hour or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. But hey, look, SmackDown, NXT, Raw recap for the week is done and dusted. Guys, this has been a long one. This has been a big one, right? There's been a lot to cover. We've been having a bit of a back and forth here, a lot of interesting topics to discuss. What are your thoughts on everything we have said here today? Because, we've covered a hell of a lot. Big detail here. If you guys agree with anything that we have said or disagree, please let us know in the comments because we're always looking to see what other people are making of all of the situations going on. And yeah, we've got just as much passion as probably most of you do as well. If you like everything that you've seen today and you like the channel, what we're putting out here, please hit the like on this video and hey, maybe even subscribe to the channel as well. We're going to be back next week with another set of videos. So guys, we will see you again then. All right. So with that being said then, thank you very much guys for tuning on in. This has been The Push with Nick and KP and we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you guys and see you later.